Define blue zone.
So blue zone was basically an area where people live very long. Like the areas in the world where they have the longest lived people. So for example, they have 20 times the number of people reaching 100 years old than we do in America. And are they genetically different, or is something going on in their lifestyle or their environment that's making them live a long time? Turns out when they move to America, they die at the same rate. They have the same longevity as we do.
We kill them right off.
Yeah, we kill them off. It's true. There's many studies that show that. So in the blue zones, by default, they're doing all the right things. It's sort of automatic. They don't think about it. And I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to eat this, and I'm going to go to Whole Foods, and I'm going to meditate. No. They basically have a diet that's super rich in simple, whole, real foods. They eat lots of vegetables. They have lots of beans. They have like if they have animal products, these animals are raised, on the local plants grazing around. They have lots of goats and sheep, typically, which are a big staple in their diet. And they're not eating sugar. There are tons of sugar. They're not eating processed food. They're eating lots of good fats. They're having lots of fish. So they're having a really healthy diet. The second is they're moving naturally. It's just they don't exercise, quote exercise. But this guy Pietro was a guy I met who was 95 years old, bolt upright, clear eyes, booming voice, fit as a fiddle. 95, right? He would literally just stop being a shepherd the year before, where he was walking 5 miles a day up the Rocky Mountains in Sardinia, herding his sheep. Well, that's just natural exercise. He had to lift and do and move. We just don't use our bodies. So they naturally use their bodies. And they also had very low levels of chronic stress. They weren't out there, overachieving this and that and doing startups and working 90 hours a week. They did what they did to survive, and they had this beautiful life of their local vegetable gardening and growing food, and their basic kind of keeping their systems going. But they also had this deep sense of connection and community and belonging. And no, there was no nursing homes. I met this woman, Julia, who was 103 months. She's like, I'm 103 months. Like, I'm 5 3/4, And she lived with her niece. She never had kids. She was never married, but she lived with her niece because the family just took them in. And so really, they really had this beautiful sense of community. And we met this guy Carmine. We were driving down this road on the side of this mountain, and this guy pulls in front of us, like blocks our car, and then gets out and then sits on this stone wall. And he's like this 86-year-old guy. And he's like, I'm like, what's going on? To my guide, and they're like, oh, he just wants to talk. So we just sat and talked for like an hour, and then he showed us where his farm was, where basically he'd been growing food forever. He had orchards and animals and sheep and growing tons of vegetables, and he tended it all himself at 86 years old. And he just wanted to sit and chat for hours, It was like, Who does that in America? So they have a deep sense of connection and community, which is a big thing. If you want to look at, one of the biggest killers, for example, being socially isolated and disconnected is the equivalent of smoking 2 packs a day in terms of its effect on your health.
Oh my God. I'm thinking about my Nana, my mom's mom. She died in 2016, October 2016, and she had just turned 101. And she went against, she went against most of your rules, but not until later in life. She was born in 1915. And so she grew up, of course, like anybody who was born in 1915, eating natural foods, not processed foods. But the second half of life, she was pretty sedentary. She was overweight. She ate nothing but processed foods. She loved them.
Amazing.
She didn't exercise much. However, she had 2 things. She had a great sense of humor. So she had some anxiety about like people getting hurt in her family, things like that. But she wasn't a stressed out person. But she was immersed in her community. The Catholic Daughters, the senior citizens home. Yeah. They used to go on the mystery trips to New York City and go to Broadway together. Even the independent living community that she ultimately moved into, it wasn't a nursing home, it was independent living. But she would walk up and down the halls. They all knew each other. It was like living in a sorority/fraternity where they all took care of each other. They all had parties together for their birthday. So honestly, like that nurturing of her social needs, I'm convinced that's what kept her alive as long as she did.
Totally. It reminds me of a story of Rosetta, Pennsylvania, where this group of Italian community came over almost as a whole community and sort of set up shop in this town. And they had, different socioeconomic statuses, but they all knew each other. They all celebrated everything together, weddings, births, holidays, whatever. We're just a deeply tight-knit community. And they adopted the typical American diet, but they weren't getting sick like the average American. And it was fascinating to see how, even despite their crappy lifestyle, they actually, because of this power of connection and belonging community, they actually lived a long, long time.
Right.
And I think that's a very important message.
Oh, can I tell you, I just interviewed Cece Moore. She's the famed genetic genealogist who helps solve crimes. I mean, legitimately has solved a bunch of crimes by studying your genes and figuring out who you might be related to. Like the case of Brian Kohlberger out in Idaho, they found some genetic DNA, whatever. She talked to me about some community in Pennsylvania that was largely Italian, and they all sort of moved to the same place. And one of them turned out to be a terrible killer, just as a little epilogue to your story. I'm sure it was a different community. Totally different community.
It wasn't that.
But wait, can I ask you something about the Mediterranean diet? Because this is always very attractive, because we, if you go over to Italy, if you go to, Greece, whatever, you may have a pasta dish, but it's small, or you'd also be having some protein. You would definitely be having some vegetables. You'd be having the olive oil. But can I ask you something? You would also be having the bread. And if you try to have a Mediterranean diet for breakfast, for yourself or your kids, I think about it all the time, because I'm always looking for an option to upgrade my children's breakfast. It's bread. It's a croissant. It's toast with jam. It's like, I don't get it. How can we get away with that? Is that really what we're supposed to be doing?
No. In fact, the number one killer and the driver of all these hallmarks of aging and accelerated biological aging is starch and sugar. It is just the number one thing. If people want to take home one thing from this conversation, it's really dramatically cut down or cut out starch and sugar in your diet. That's flour products.
I got to be honest, doctor. This morning I gave my 3 kids bagels with some protein. I like some peanut butter. Bagels.
Okay, protein's okay.
Chocolate milk. I mean, so sugar.
No, chocolate milk.
And I did. We're trying to get them to drink milk, but we want them to drink milk, and they won't drink it unless we make it a little sweeter. It's bad. I violated all the rules. I don't. You can't give them eggs every day.
No, there's other things in eggs, but what's interesting is the amount of sugar we eat is so enormous, and it is driving so much of the problem. And the bread issue is interesting, because I was in Icaria, and I had bread, and there was this guy who made bread the traditional way. It was zea flour. Zea is a form of ancient wheat, and it's actually a wheat that was eaten by Alexander the Great that fueled his adventures and conquests. It's super high in protein. It's very low in the glycemic index, very low in gluten, full of minerals, and it's raised and cooked and it's raised in ways that keep its integrity in terms of its nutritional density. And when they prepare the bread, it's super dense. So it's something like that is a very different food than the kind of fluffy white breads we get here that are from dwarf wheat that are super high in starch. I mean, it's really bad. So I think, if you're having traditional foods, a little bit of probably bread and in a traditional way is okay. But it's with everything else we're doing, it's 60% of our diet is ultra processed food. We eat 152 pounds of sugar and 133 pounds of flour per person a day. That's just an enormous amount. So that's the problem.
Going to bed at a decent hour did not always mean I got enough sleep. Maybe you can relate. Oftentimes I was too hot or too cold or just not comfy. Well, that changed thanks to my Cozy Earth bedding, the softest, most luxurious, and responsibly sourced bedding on the planet. Cozy Earth bedding is naturally temperature regulating, so I sleep great in any weather. And I'm not alone. Laura, she left this 5-star review. Quote, "My husband and I are getting the best sleep we've ever had, to the point where we don't wake up in the middle of the night because we're so comfortable. I can't wait to buy more colors," end quote. Cozy Earth bedding is made from the finest materials, including premium viscose made from highly sustainable bamboo. Whether it's their luxury sheets, available in 5 beautiful colors, their loungewear, pajamas, or their premium waffle bath towels, you're going to love shopping at Cozy Earth. Hurry, save 35% right now on Cozy Earth. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter my promo code Megyn, MEGYN, and save 35% off your order. CozyEarth.com, promo code MEGYN. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.